Hello one, hello all. It is the most dog dad of them all, Caspa in the flesh, and it's time for a review of Post Malone-Austin. You okay? Pupper's fine. This is the latest album from Post Malone. Post Malone's been at it for quite a while now, starting with his mixtape, August 26th, which he released in 2016, and then later following it up with the very underwhelming Stony. Yeah, Stony. Maybe his worst, maybe, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to say that when 12 Karat Toothache was so awful, which I did not enjoy. I can't say at all, but there was so much going on that I did not enjoy about it. However, there were moments lyrically I felt that were worth mentioning and were a highlight and were enjoyable, but as an overall album, I felt like this thing left a ton to be desired. But of course, I do have to mention too the highlights of his career, such as Beer Bongs and Bentleys, and I think that was the last hurrah for Post Malone. Definitely his best, and unfortunately his last best. There was so many bangers on there, definitely an enjoyable album. Not my favorite album of that year, but definitely an album I felt worth mentioning. And while 12 Karat Toothache, while I do commend him on the thematic focus, it was just hard for me to get past how airbrushed the vocals were and how disgusting the production was. And unfortunately, I feel that carries on to this album as well. But I will say that Post Malone's writing does get better album through album. I will say that on here, we're probably getting his best writing by far. The only problem is the production is so terrible. And he's definitely touching on very deep subjects such as death, substance abuse, and breakups. Definitely a lot of depressing subjects on here, which should be heartening. And normally with topics this devastating, it's normally the recipe for a very compelling album. Fortunately, the production here is so bland, it does not complement his writing here at all. In fact, it insults it, which is very unfortunate because, as I mentioned before, I feel writing-wise, this is definitely Post's best. Like the song Morning, which is a good tune at its core about his ongoing battles with alcohol and saying how he wish he could stay inebriated and how the sun is killing his buzz. It's why they call it Morning. And honestly, I feel like poetically that is very clever. But the beat is so basic, so bland and basic. It doesn't really evolve at all. That's the problem with a lot of these songs. They don't really evolve into much of anything except for some powerful writing, but the most blandest tacked on production you could think of. Like Too Cool to Die, another song, dogs barking. It just sounds like a cheesy synth pop song with the same pumping synth we've heard time and time and time again. The vocals are disgustingly clean. And the background vocals sound like post AIs, which does not complement the heartbreaking sentiment that this track has. Like, I feel it should be pulling at my heartstrings, but in actuality, it's basically just leaving me scratching my head. And the song Sign Me Up just sounds like a failed attempt at recreating the Cure's love song, with these soulless Beach Boy group harmonies. But I will admit though, this album, in comparison to 12 Karat Toothache, does have some highlights. It has a few highlights. The song Don't Understand is a heart-wrenching acoustic cut. In a way, the instrumentation kind of reminds me of something Smashing Pumpkins would have done back in the day. Why Post Malone is struggling to understand why this person is so enamored with him, why this person has so much adoration for him when he lacks so much love and admiration for himself. Where his bravado sounds so pained and the strings here sound so bold and forlorn. It's a very beautiful and powerful opener. The song Chemical, though, is about post-addiction, is definitely framed as a very toxic relationship going on. And I feel the personification is done really well here. And while this is a synth pop style song, I feel this is probably the only synth pop style song that is done well. With a nice driving bass line, glowing synths, it almost reminds me of New Order's Age of Consent in a way. And I love the soaring vocal leads. A chemical. The song Green Thumb is another tragic, heartbreaking moment on here, with these somber plucked strings and passionate vocals about a dying relationship, which Post refers to as a garden, which is absolutely heartbreaking. With how stripped back the production is and how graphic Post's lyrics are on here, it definitely creates a very powerful contrast. And I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but it's definitely a heartbreaker. And unfortunately, that's pretty much it when it comes to highlights. The rest of this stuff is very throwaway, in my opinion, and should have really gone back to the drawing board. And make no mistake, Post is pouring his heart out here, but the production is so soulless, he might as well scoop it back up and put it into better production. And the song Something Real, in here you're asking for give me something I could feel. Well, I guess that request went on deaf ears, because if those demands were met, why does your choir sound like cyborgs? And Socialite, easily the worst song on here. Not only is the production bad, but the lyrics are awful as well. And due to how we have some really great writing on here and bad production, this is where you don't get either. Especially where Post goes, I'm calling her Shrek because she got a donkey. I'm sorry, but was this supposed to be flattering? And as I alluded to earlier, the best synth pop you get is the Chemical song, because anytime he embarks on other songs in the synth pop realm, it just goes downhill. Feeling like he's just grabbing the most blandest elements and cliches he could possibly think of when it comes to synth pop and just tacking them on there. And when it comes to the mixing is definitely another thing that left me scratching my head and then wanting to throw my head into a brick wall. Like on the song Hold My Breath, where the vocals are hideously manipulated and pitched almost to a point where they sound squeaky and boyish. As the track goes on, they sound so sandwiched together with how compressed they sound. It's atrocious to listen to. And the track Enough Is Enough, which at this point of the album really hits the nail on the head for me, with how immensely blown out the production is, to a point where it's clipping so bad I honestly had to check my headphones to see if they weren't fucked up. There is definitely lyrical, emotional potency here. I just wish the production was on par with the writing here. And the song Texas Tea, which goes toe-to-toe with Taylor Swift's Ready For It to see who can make the worst industrial pop song. And the song Buyer Beware has the most tackiest 2010 cliche electropop production on here, with a bland guitar line and these peppy hand claps that have been done to death over and over. And the song Laugh It Off, which could have been a great closer. It could have been. Talking about how he's basically came to a point where he's devoid of feeling, devoid of pain, and he's just so numb. Like he's at a point of numbness. But the clunky, reverbed drums on the back end don't complement this at all. They sound so tacked on and just not a good fit. But yeah, this thing leaves me conflicted, kind of like the last one did, except I know the highlights. I know the highlights, and there are some songs on here that I could take away from that I find enjoyable. But as an overall album experience, this was bad. This was bad. Not his worst, though. Not his worst. If he could make the production sound more human touch, that could complement how emotive his lyrics are, how compelling his lyrics are, then I think we could have a great album here. But unfortunately, we didn't get that. So I think if he could take the powerful elements, great elements he took upon Beer Bongs and Bentley and combine them with his improved songwriting, we could have a great album. But unfortunately, I'm not feeling that way here. I'm feeling 1.5 hearts on this out of 5. Yeah, Yeah, that's a good rating. But hey, my opinion, you may enjoy this more than me, and that's fine. But I can't say I am. But what'd you think of this? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And that's it. Caspa, Got the Ghost, Post Malone, Austin. Till we meet again.